Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
It's done.
Connor McDavid! It's not real!
The goal of the year,
Panarin!
part of the past. The celebrations, forgotten. The history,
Vegas Golden Knights!
history. We're back to a blank slate. Clean ice. All that matters now is what happens next. The Stanley Cup playoffs.
Eastern Conference Final begins Wednesday.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast. I'm Tara Bowen-Biggs, joined as always by Blazers outsider Danny Marang.
Oh, hi.
I felt like that was really chipper, considering how sad I am inside after that Dallas game.
Chipper, anti-chipper. I don't know what I'm going with here. I'm sitting here sulking, watching the replay, and we're in the fourth quarter right now, and the Blazers still have the lead with 7 minutes to go, so it's looking up. As they
Good. I'm
say.
so glad that you can relive that.
Yeah.
So it's Sunday night. Portland was almost treated to a giant snowstorm, but instead all we got were long lines at the grocery store. I actually had a lot of snow at my house. Did you have a lot of snow at your house?
No, I only got like an inch, but I know I got a couple friends around the region had anywhere from 5 to 9 inches. So,
and there were many people who had absolutely none.
Mm-hmm.
So after all that buildup, it was a pleasure to go to watch a Blazer game, early game on a Sunday.
Pleasure to
the first
watch.
3 quarters, were great. Well, they were fine.
What do the Snow
they
and
were
the Blazers
totally
have in
fine.
common? They don't disappear without a trace. Hey, all right.
Okay, but here's the thing. I don't want to dwell on that game, but do you think we should dwell on that game?
I mean,
or is it
post-game,
this burn the tape and move on?
It's a little bit of dwell, a little bit of burn the tape, because the locker room, for everything I've been able to gather, was not a good place to be after that game. Dame was rightfully pissed about the lack of calls that he got or didn't get to close out the game. The entire locker room was frustrated with the fact that Zach Collins was picking up ticky-tack fouls for the exact same thing that Kleber and Dwight Powell were not getting called for on the other end. Just the overall attitude around the locker room, from what I was told, was that guys were pretty pissed off with how they didn't take care of business and how you're looking forward at the Oklahoma City Thunder and how it's basically a battle for one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the Western Conference, and you couldn't even handle this game. Like, if you can't handle this game, how are you supposed to deal with MVP candidate Paul George?
Well, I'm glad they were mad because I think they have every reason to be. So this was the second game where they've had the new lineup. So one of the things that I say a lot is I like it when they get new additions to the lineup, in this case Rodney Hood, because it makes everybody have to concentrate a little harder. And I thought they were playing well together, but then what happened? I don't think it was the fact that they were trying to work somebody new in. It was just all of a sudden there was like a layup line. Like, I was looking at the shooting, the shot chart for after the game, and the Dallas Mavericks just had this big giant green blob directly under their basket. Like, they had no problem getting that close to the basket. So what was going on there? And is this a symptom of something that has been developing, or do you think it was just like a fluke?
We saw a little bit of this in the Miami game where the Blazers got beat pretty handily on some straight line drives. I saw a lot of that reminiscent late in the third going into the fourth quarter, particularly on the perimeter. CJ did not have a good game offensively or defensively. Thought it was one of his worst efforts of the season when you consider both sides of the ball. He had in the fourth quarter, he had the carry turnover, and then he had the pass that was, who God knows where it was going. And then Tim Hardaway Jr. repeatedly roasted him. It was not a good effort from him, which was kind of disappointing because he's been playing so well over the last, 2 weeks? So
Yeah, no, I thought he looked fine in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, he ended up 6 of 17. Like, he started 1 of 5 from the field, so he went, 5 of 12 to close out the game, which is still not great. 0 of 5 from 3. He did contribute in other areas, which we don't always see. Pulled down 5 boards, 5 assists. But, again, those 2 turnovers were pretty costly there in the fourth. And I'm not blaming the entire collapse on him. But I thought the ball
right, and
stopped.
CJ's not the guy who generally guards the basket. So again, what was going on there?
Tim Hardaway Jr. was getting to the rim pretty relentlessly
because he was getting past
CJ.
CJ.
Just getting downhill, and then you had guys like Finney Smith, Gobert, Dwight Powell, which is just weird. None of them were really all that efficient as far as volume, but it was timely buckets. I mean, you look at how the Mavs scored. You had 28 from Luka, 24 from Hardaway, and then 13, 11, and 9 between Powell, Finney-Smith, and Maxey. And it's weird because you look at the Blazers, outside of Dame, Nurk, and CJ, nobody was really scoring. And I think the Nurk one is the one that really hurt them because even though he was a minus 14 on the night, he was the one thing that was kind of protecting the rim. And there were times when I saw 2 fouls that he got called for that literally didn't touch anybody, and there were times where he was, wrestling with a bear in the paint and not getting called. So, really inconsistent on the reffing side of things. I'm watching the one where he literally just blasted Dwight Powell in the middle of the back and picked up a foul. And it was just decision making pretty much across the line wasn't good.
It seemed like the Blazers had a hard time spreading the floor tonight because it seemed like every time they were, fighting for an offensive rebound, there were 4 guys on whoever was there.
Offensively, I think that they were okay in the first half. And this is going to sound crazy, I wonder if Dame going nuclear in the third was not necessarily a good thing because after that moment, the ball stopped. Like, if you watch the fourth quarter, the ball is not moving side to side. They are not going to pick and roll. They are not going to dribble handoffs. They are not going to pin downs. Like,
they're just standing and letting Dame do his thing without making themselves available as the second or third options.
Yeah, I mean, Jake and then Rodney, after the Spurs game, I mean, they had decent games, 4-7, 3-7. Rodney was a plus 13. I mean, like the good things happened, really, when he was on the floor. Same with Evan Turner. Like, Evan Turner, I saw some people getting mad because he only had 2 points tonight. Yeah, but he had 7 assists and 8 rebounds. Like, he was setting guys up regularly all night long.
And he wasn't taking a lot of shots
he was
either.
1 of 2. Like, I thought Evan had a very good game. And I was honestly surprised that Stotts opted to go with Harkless down the stretch and not Evan. Because, I mean, Harkless, what did he end up shooting in the night? 2 of 7, 0 of 2 from 3? Like, it was weird.
2 things about this before we move on to the next topic. Hold on, I completely forgot what I was going to say.
maybe no things?
Yeah, you got to cut that out.
Oh, no, let's stay in there. Come on now.
Let's see. It was about
Evan Turner, Mo Harkless?
Well, I wanted to talk about Evan Turner because I want to talk about Rodney Hood because I find the way that they play very similar, and I want to know if you see the same thing. But there was one last thing I wanted to say about the Dallas game. Oh, yeah. Okay. So what I wanted to say about the Dallas game is I don't think that game really represents where the Blazers are right now. Because if you look at, like, the last 15 games, they've been the team that we saw them play against Dallas looked more like the team when it was struggling at the beginning of the year. If you look at, the last 15 games or so, basically since they started running the ball through Nurkic, the Blazers have been really fun to watch. And that's something that I have really been enjoying lately. I was just talking about that with somebody. They've been passing the ball more. They've been shooting better. They have, all those alley-oops and dunks, they've been fun, and there's been a lot going on, and today did not feel like that. So I kind of feel like this is one of those games where they got to learn from it and then just throw it away and move on. That having been said, they have a pretty tough road in front of them, and I wonder how hard it's going to be to move on. Because, the last 15 games, they've been number 5 in scoring. They've been number 3 in field goal percentage.
Their offensive numbers over the last 15 are great, but I think
they've been up to number 7 in assists over the last 15 games. They were 11th. They're 11th in turnovers, and then tonight that just went by the wayside.
Here's the thing: is that while those last 15 are great, I think we're looking at two very different teams. The team that went into that break, coming off a big, just throttling win of the Utah Jazz, beating them by 28. That team has not been out there. Yeah, the Blazers took care of the Spurs the other night, but remember, they basically got manhandled by the Heat. They looked awful. Well, now they just dropped another game that they absolutely should have won because they weren't on top of things. Their effort wasn't there. Their execution wasn't there. So it's 2 of the last 3 that they've dropped where the effort, execution, and the extraneous things that you could control were subpar.
Well, then let's move on to it, because one of the things I've had in the back of my head is wondering how much of that has to do with the trade deadline and realistically working in new players.
I mean, sure, you can say that, but just take a look at the Dallas Mavericks. Tim Hardaway Jr. played 32 minutes tonight, gave him 24 points. Trey Burke's out there getting 18 minutes. Jalen Brunson played 24 minutes, Tara. If I gave you these names and asked you if they were NBA players or the American Alliance of Football players, could you get 50% of them?
I would have gotten Tim Hardaway Jr.
That's not a shot at you. It's just in general. Ryan Broekhoff, Daryl Macon.
Okay, so what you're saying is the Blazers should not be struggling with trying to work new people in or feeling uncomfortable about trade deadline stuff.
No, listen, the only guys who should be feeling that heat, so to speak, are Harkless and Aminu. Because
they were the ones you think were most likely to have been moved.
If anybody was getting phone calls about having your bag packed just in case, it's those 2 guys. But the thing is, who's picking up the minutes there? It's Layman and Hood.
To be honest, those are the 2 guys, and I hate to say that about Chief because you know how much I love him, but those are the 2 guys who I haven't seen a lot of production out recently.
No, and that's problematic, and I think that's why the Blazers are kind of looking towards Hood. Hood's played 2 games there, and he's hitting 25 minutes in back-to-back games.
Yeah. Well, let's move over to Hood and just put the Dallas game behind us and hope for better things in Oklahoma City. But talk about the Blazers trade deadline, the acquisition of Hood. We already talked about that a little bit, but we hadn't seen him play yet. So continue about what you were saying about how he's fitting in.
For the most part, I think he's fitting in really well. I've seen a few times where obviously he didn't know the sets. They've gone through 2 practices, so I don't expect him to have them all locked in. But in 2 games, he's getting up 7 shots a game, getting 11 points a night. Effective, efficient. He's getting 4 threes up in back-to-back games. Go ahead and give me that. You get 5 tonight, 3 the night before or the game before. So if Rodney Hood's getting up 8 to 11 shots and 3 to 5 threes a night, I'm okay with that. Because realistically, Harkless' shots should come down. Aminu's shots should come down. If you're talking about whether or not you like Harkless or you prefer Harkless or Aminu or any of those guys, Hood's a better offensive player than either one of them. Ifs, ands, buts. There's no argument to be made otherwise. There's literally not a foundational argument to be made about Hood versus Aminu or Harkless offensively. It's just. It
seems like Hood is you can count on a higher minimum from him night in and night out.
He can create off the bounce. We've seen him step into shots in transition, knock down threes. He's got a nice little mid-post game. That was actually how the Blazers got him involved in the first game. He can finish at the rim. Very, very confident shooter. Fits right into, if you read the article that I wrote on Saturday, his attack range is basically, I said this on Outsiders tonight, and I'm going to stick with it. It's a slice of pie, actual pie. So from the rim out to the angle 3 is a 45-degree line on each side, out from the rim, out and then up to dead center above the 3-point line. That's his attack range. He wants to get towards the middle of the court right there and funnel downhill. Whereas Jake Layman plays a little bit outside that and then at the rim. So they kind of complement each other really well. It's kind of this yin-yang, how they go about different ways of getting to the same kind of places. And we saw it tonight.
And they don't run into each
No.
other because they're preferring to operate in different
And
areas.
they may finish in the same general areas, but how they get there is very different. With Hood, Layman, and ET, honestly, I'd like to see that combination more because they
So how
play
does
off
ET fit in? Because I feel like Hood and ET could potentially occupy a lot of the same
They
space.
could, but if you saw earlier tonight and a little bit during the Spurs game, Jake obviously has a relationship with ET. Like those lobs are coming endlessly.
Yeah.
But Evan does a really good job, and Rodney is not the same kind of cutter that Jake is. But if I'm ranking cutters on this team, Jake's number one, and then there's a giant gap. Hood's maybe number two. But having that additional cutter, having that another guy who's willing to make those moves, making them make those runs, and I see a little bit of chemistry already developing between Hood and Layman. Because we're talking that kind of that yin yang, the symbiotic relationship that those two have. They share with where they are on the floor. There was a beautiful drive give and go setup between Hood and Layman tonight, and it was like, oh, that looks like they've been doing that for a while. But as far as Evan occupying the same role, could it be problematic? Yes, if you have them out there with another non-shooter. There were times tonight with Collins on the floor where I really wanted to see the Blazers go with Myers Leonard. Because
Myers Leonard has the ability to shoot from farther out.
Spread that floor much more consistently. Like, listen, Zach's he's not bad, but nobody's really worried about him. You put Myers in a pick and roll with Evan, they're gonna have to worry about the pop. I mean, that's realistically that's how and I would like to see a lineup of Hood, Layman, Turner, Myers, insert whoever else here. Like if you want to throw Seth out there, if you want to throw Harkless in there, if you want to throw Zach in there, fine. But I would like to see that kind of like the wing lineup that allows guys to switch a ton.
Is there anything that from what you've seen in just only 2 games so far that concerns you in terms of, that could be a difficult combination, that could be rough?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't have, like, if they do bump Harkless to the bench, I don't think you can have Harkless and Turner out there with Aminu or something like that. But otherwise, for the most part, I think Hood is a guy you can plug in pretty much anywhere. I think he's a guy, much like Jake Layman, who is just going to just do his thing. And that's why I was so, not necessarily excited, but I was happy with the addition of Rodney Hood. Because what have we talked about for years now, Tara?
Are we talking about we've talked about a lot of things, but are you getting at the 6'9" guys?
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a time tonight where it was Damian Lillard was the shortest guy, and then it was Hood and Layman and I think Turner maybe, and I can't remember who the center was at the time. But I was like, there's that length. There's that whole bunch of 6'9" guys.
Yeah. Realistically, I mean, that's just, it adds to that. That fundamentally changes what they do. And not just another 6'8", 6'9" guy. It's a guy who can put the ball on the floor offensively. And defensively, I know a lot of the questions were about Hood, where, how would he look defensively? For not knowing the Blazers' schemes, I mean, he knows them based off scouting reports, but, you don't know the entirety of them. But he's done pretty well. I haven't seen him. The Blazers are switching maybe a little bit more and a little earlier than they would normally. I saw a couple times tonight between Dame and Hood where Dame initiated and called for the switch much earlier than I typically see him call for it. And I think that was kind of to alleviate some of the pressure of Rodney trying to have to make a decision and understanding whose help is where and where they're trying to funnel them to, just to make the switch and just make it a little bit easier for him. But beyond that, for the most part, I've been pleasantly surprised with Hood defensively.
So how about the Blazers' other addition, Skal? We talked about this before the podcast. Labissiere.
Yeah.
Skal Labissiere.
Just call him Skal.
What are your thoughts on Skal?
I mean,
my pal Skal. That's how I wrote it down. Skal like pal.
Yeah, no, Skal's the homie. Skal's a guy that I've wanted the Blazers to go after. If you listened to the podcast last week, before the deadline, I suggested that the Blazers would be going after him.
Yeah, and didn't you think that they were going to give up Mo Harkless and a pick?
Oh yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly what it was. It was the Blazers were going to give up Mo Harkless and a first-round pick for Skal. And it was no way, in any way, shape, matter, or form, a salary dump that the Blazers had talked about doing. But, people that are out there know a lot more than I do, apparently. And the Blazers instead opted to go on the little luxury tax. So, but I knew that the Blazers were kicking around Skal. And I'm not entirely surprised.
So tell us about Skal's upside, in your opinion.
I mean, 6'11", got a decent wingspan, standing reach. He's got a really soft touch. He got to the game of basketball really late, much like Jusuf Nurkic. Came to basketball like 14 years old. Very, I don't want to say European, but that's what his skill set kind of feels like, in that he's a pick and pop kind of big. So
he's a shooter?
Yeah, very smooth. Like everything about what he does looks very smooth. He's the kind of guy where you wonder if he got to the game 8 years earlier, where could he be? I still think the potential for him is very high. He's still quite young. And while I still think he's a break glass in case of emergency big, I think that it's a good move for Portland. I think it's a guy that very much fits the Neil O'Shea model of low cost, low risk, potentially high reward, buried on the depth chart, didn't have enough opportunity, yada, yada. I mean, you tick all the boxes for the Neil O'Shea signings and trades, right? I mean, Hood, to an extent, was kind of that. He was just not...
He was in a rough situation in Cleveland.
I mean,
he was in a bad
that
situation.
That can't be a good place for a guy who is, pretty much in his prime, right? His prime basketball years. It's one thing to be an old guy there or a young guy there. You don't want to be an in-prime guy on a team that's one of the worst in the league. So, but as far as Skal goes, I'm pretty happy with that.
So one thing I was a little concerned about with the moves that the Blazers made at the trade deadline didn't really rear its head until I was watching the game tonight, and we had both Collins and Nurkic in foul trouble. Myers Leonard really being the only other option, and I just thought, I wish that they'd had a more plug and play, ready to go big guy that they could have had, who would have been. I feel like they've got, 3 rotation players playing that center forward position, but I don't think besides Nurkic that they're very strong right now. I mean, Myers can come in and play I like Myers coming in and playing a few minutes here, changing the look of the game by the way he spreads the floor. But for extended minutes, I don't think he's a good substitute for Nurkic, and I just don't think Collins is ready. And I think part of it might be because, and this is one thing I harp on all the time, is like, who's their big man coach who is systematically developing like Zach Collins right now? Like last year, it was, for lack of anybody else, it was Ed Davis. And without Ed Davis there, I feel like Zach is, I don't know if I would say he's sliding backwards, but he's not making the progress like he did last year. And I was just wishing that at the trade deadline, they could have found somebody who could have served that role, because I don't think that same kind of chemistry exists between him and Myers. And I just don't think he's ready yet. And I don't think we should rush him. I mean, you've been saying that. But I feel like, going for somebody who is going to be developed behind Zach didn't do the best service to Zach. Yeah, no,
I think it's one of those things.
I mean, that's kind of why some people, I know Mirotic doesn't play that same role, but
he'd eat up Zach's minutes.
What?
He'd eat up Zach's minutes in a heartbeat. If the Blazers made a move for Mirotic, which is part of the reason why I think they didn't, Zach would not have minutes.
They wouldn't have played together at all.
I don't think so.
I don't know. They've been playing Zach more at center.
Yeah, and that's.
Have you noticed that?
I've noticed it because it's glaring.
Mirotic alongside him, he would have had a guy who's established and is familiar with the game.
Yeah, but where you're seeing most of Zach's regression come from is because Zach is playing center. That's exactly why.
But at least he would have somebody who.
I don't think it's going to last.
I don't know.
I legitimately, I don't think it's going to last. I think they're going to go back to Zach playing more of the 4, and they may go with some of those small ball lineups. But I mean, he was struggling tonight with guys like Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber.
I just don't think he's ready, and I don't want to.
You don't want to burden him with it because it's not something he's ready for.
And last year he jumped out with Ed alongside him, and it was okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think they're trying to get Zach to play through some of the confidence things.
Yeah.
We saw it in the Spurs game where he really didn't get minutes, and then all of a sudden he came out, which was really weird. So Myers comes out in the first half, plays well, right, against the Spurs.
Oh, it was so fun watching Myers and Nurkic just absolutely bodying up LaMarcus.
I mean, they were beating him up.
It's like all they put on the whiteboard was LaMarcus doesn't like contact.
Yeah.
And those two just went in and were just they were draped over him. Oh my gosh, that was so fun.
Myers had one play where I think he like sucker punched LaMarcus in the kidneys it's like 3 different times. It was like, okay, I'd play LaMarcus. That's what I want to see. Or Myers. That's what I want to see. Subconsciously went back to congratulating LaMarcus there. But yeah, like it was very strange to see Myers go out there, perform well, make LaMarcus work his ass off for every shot, and then not get any burn in the second half. And then all of a sudden Collins is out there, and I was kind of like, wait, what's going on here? So going back to something I mentioned earlier here in the pod, I think over the next few weeks, we're going to see Stotts play with the lineups pretty hard.
Okay.
And I
guess now's the time to do it since they're trying to incorporate a new player anyway.
And you want to know what your rotation is, right? Because you're introducing a guy who's going to get 20 to 25 minutes a night. Layman has shown that he should be getting 20 to 25 minutes a night. Harkless and Aminu should probably be getting less minutes. And I don't think Collins has done anything to justify him getting more than 10 to 15 minutes a night. So you kind of have to figure out how this is going to work. And I think the biggest question for the Blazers going forward right now as far as potential lineups is that, can Jake play the 4? And I think that's a bit of a stretch. But I think against some lineups he'll be okay, and some lineups it will be the opposite of okay.
Right. Well, you know what I found out today when I was writing up the Mom's Favorite column, and I don't know if it was true of the Dallas game, but Jake had, previous to the Dallas game, Jake had played all 12 minutes of the fourth quarter in 5 of the last 7 games. I mean, the whole fourth quarter.
Closing lineups. Doesn't matter who starts, it matters who finishes, right?
Yeah.
I think that shows you the confidence that Stotts is, whether or not Harkless is starting, the confidence in who they have to close out games right now.
Yeah. I mean, my guess is that, once the rotation settles, is that Aminu and Harkless will lose some minutes. I don't think Aminu will lose as many as Harkless will. But yeah, Jake has just absolutely made his case. Like he's just like, you can't not play me.
At this point, if you're still sitting here pining for Harkless or Aminu to get more minutes, like there's not much else anybody can do to show you what Layman has done or is capable of doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not ready to lump Aminu into the, suddenly he's given up and is not showing
but
any
he
effort.
should not be getting the extra minutes based on past performance, I don't think. I think that what Stotts has done recently in that who's giving up the minutes right now is it's between Harkless, Aminu, and Collins, and that's rightfully so.
Right, and if you've got a shooter coming in, let the shooter shoot, and if he's playing passable enough defense. I mean, I was noticing tonight that, Aminu wasn't even necessarily on the best player. Hood was guarding Doncic a lot.
Yeah. And Hood did actually a pretty good job for a stretch there, and then Luka in that fourth quarter hit a couple ridiculous finishes. The and one was on Hood, I think, and then the other one when Harkless came in.
Yeah.
So I mean, guess what? Doncic is pretty good.
God, he's fun to watch. He really is. I don't know. Hard to dislike.
It's hard to hate Luka.
It's hard to dislike that team. Really, I don't. It's hard to dislike them, but it's easy to dislike losing to them. Anything else you want to mention about the Blazers trade deadline activity before we talk just general terms about what happened in the league?
The Tobias Harris one was the one that came out of nowhere, right? Philly is a legit finals team. Realistically, they are loaded for bear.
Yeah, it seems like they seem like a real combustible mix.
Oh yeah, there's 1,000%. They may kill each other.
Everything could go really well, or the whole thing could just implode.
Absolutely, but I think that's what makes that a really, really fun and interesting experiment. And I think you have to really credit Elton Brand for seizing an opportunity to go big. Like, I will never get mad at a GM across the league who sees the landscape and goes, you know, if I add this guy, I've got a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about a matchup?
Bring him in and we'll sort it all out later.
That's very much the Bob Whitsitt, the Trader Bob mentality, right? Just and Toby and Bobby, you know, Marjanovic.
I know, it's so cute
Harris.
that they got traded together.
Yeah, I mean, that's the second time they got to stay together.
That's so sweet. Just like the Wade Baldwin and Nick
Jesus,
Stauskas combination.
honestly, I hope to God those guys never got on a plane. I hope they stayed in Portland, because getting traded for four different teams and then getting released, yeesh.
I know.
I feel bad
and
for
together as a package, that's got to make you just feel like inhuman.
Yeah, it's got to suck. But I mean, hey, at least both their contracts are guaranteed, so they're getting paid.
Yeah, that was a bummer. But anyway, Bobby and Toby got moved together
they're loaded.
The 76ers.
The Raptors making a big move for Marc Gasol. That was a little surprising.
So, give me a little insight here into. I thought Marc Gasol was getting older, losing a step, causing locker room dysfunction, making their coach get fired.
Yeah, there's some weird things going on, because Chandler Parsons, after Gasol gets traded, is all of a sudden coming back to resume basketball activities with the Grizzlies. Like, it makes you wonder if there was a situation between Gasol and Chandler.
That just sounds like a Fox TV show. Anything covering the relationship of those two. It just seems like like a reality TV show.
It's not great.
But it really surprised me. Can I say my favorite thing about the trade deadline is that it was all the Eastern teams that got so much better.
It's nice to see some talent go from the West to the East for once, right?
It was so great.
Obviously, the one that kind of slides under the radar here is maybe the best team in the league so far this season, the Milwaukee Bucks, picking up Mirotic for expiring contracts. And that listen, I want to beat up on Neil O'Shea for a lot of things, and I do. But he's not lying when he says that all the deals were done for expiring deals. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But I think the criticism,
next year's looking pretty good.
Is it though? Because a lot of teams have expiring deals, and this is the argument that I've if you want to be mad about 2016 beyond the deals themselves, is that making them all for 4 years.
That they were 4 years instead of 3.
Just imagine one of those deals. If one of those deals is expiring, the Blazers are probably players in the trade deadline market. So,
but it wasn't.
But
so
overall, that was the
Bucks
theme.
picked up Mirotic.
Yeah, that was the theme of the trade deadline: expiring deals for decent players. And I guess I should take this time, since I lost the bet, to Casey Holdall.
Yes.
To sing his praises. The Blazers did not make it. I'm not mad. Yeah, okay, I'm mad because if they were going to make moves, I want them to go big. And I know they went after some bigger fish, but of course everybody's going to say, "Oh, I'm sure they went after." Listen, they went after some bigger fish.
So people should be happy that they at least went after.
Yeah, and there was good movement. Let's put it that way.
And they got Rodney Hood, and they got Skal for
13th, 14th,
Caleb
and 15th
Swanigan,
guys.
which shocked me. Yeah. I thought, and maybe this is terrible to say,
misreported or something.
No, I thought maybe they were like, they entered negotiations thinking, okay, we'll ask for Caleb Swanigan, and then they'll ask for something more back, and we'll be like, oh, okay, well, we can do it. But they were like, okay,
that'll do.
And they were like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's each getting a new opportunity on another team, right?
Right. So, but technically, the Blazers were not under the luxury tax line at the end of the trade deadline, and as a result, you lost a bet to Casey Holdall.
Correct. So I must sing his praises and exhort him and praise all that he is and all that he knows. For he is the all-knowing Casey Holdall, the owner, the proprietor of the second best, tied for first, Blazers podcast. I can't congratulate him that much. But Casey had it right. And believe it or not, Casey does not have the insider knowledge with the Blazers when it comes to the inner workings of the trade, so he's not playing with a stacked deck here. The Blazers keep that stuff that tight. If you guys listened to the podcast when we had Casey on, you would know how tightly they run things. I legitimately thought they were going to go big, or not go at all. And so here I am singing Casey's praises, his brilliance.
Yeah, say some more specific nice things about Casey. I think that's really what you're supposed to be doing, not just like generically saying, oh, I praise Casey, but like give us some specifics.
I did. I said his brilliance, his cunning, his knowledge.
Yeah, but those aren't like specific examples of things that he's done. That's just like generic.
You're not helping me here.
No, I'm trying to help you so that you fulfill the terms of your bet. Because if I was him listening, I'd be like, that's really nice, but like that wasn't specific enough. Like when you sing his praises, you're supposed to say, his pictures on Instagram are always interesting.
This
the
is
tweets
true.
that he sets out are timely.
Casey does have
stuff like that.
Casey does have a very, very strong Instagram game. His shoe photos are fantastic. His articles at forwardcenter.net are wonderful and amazing. You should consume them.
Because
Casey is a brilliant writer, and
he's a good writer. Is he a good storyteller? Is he good at analysis? Give us a little bit more what we can expect when we read Casey.
Listen,
Casey, I'm helping you out here.
You're helping too much, Tara. That's the problem here. I'm beginning to wonder whose podcast you're on.
Isn't it ours?
Yeah, I know, but I feel like you're over here for Casey's.
Well, you know what, Dan? I wasn't the one out making bets.
Yeah, well, you know what?
That I was going to lose. So.
Hey, listen, I'm surprised they did it. A lot of people around the league are surprised they did it. I mean, they're paying $12 million in luxury tax, almost $13 million in luxury tax this year for a team that is largely the same. I know that they did try to make moves to get under, but the price of that is just too much, and they figured, I guess, the $12 million would be enough. And I'm assuming that next year they're going to be under, unless they have a real serious contender. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this summer.
Yeah, it sure will be, and it'll be interesting to see what Casey, the wonderful writer, writes about it.
This is very true, and I'm sure he'll live tweet better than Woj.
Yeah, what's the second part of your commitment to this bet that you made with Casey?
Tweet about him every morning for the next week. First tweet of the day. So
are you going to be more specific than just I praise Casey?
I'll be fulfilling the rest of my bet starting Monday morning. Shout out scheduled tweets.
All right.
So good
Let's
times.
see. Let's see. What other kinds of news have been trickling out, or any other trades that you want to talk about? I guess one of the things that, we haven't. Have we talked about the Porzingis trade? He was there at the game.
Yeah, I mean, for everybody wondering why KP's not playing, or they heard that he's healthy, not healthy. So the word that I've been able to gather is that he is healthy, but they're treating this more as a body balancing situation. So in order to prevent injuries in the future, not that they don't care about this year, but they're more worried about offering him a 5-year, $160 million contract.
And knowing he'll be healthy.
And what they want to do is they want to break him down and build him back up. They want to get the imbalances out of his hips, out of his back, out of his core. They want to strengthen him and build him up. He's a 7'3" dude. Like, the thing is, like, if you're talking about a team that's familiar with rebuilding awkwardly long 7-foot+ European white dudes, your niche market is Dallas, baby. I mean, they kept Dirk viable and playing for essentially 20 years. Like that's incredible. So I trust that the Mavericks will probably be able to figure that out. But as far as other deals,
I mean, were they trying to not win, or do you think that they were still planning on trying to win? I mean,
Dallas.
Yeah.
I don't think they care right now.
Okay.
Because they owe their pick to Atlanta. Depending on the protections.
So they still want to win.
I think that, and
they want to develop Luka as best as they can, and that is not going to be by providing him with a bunch of players who can't get him somewhere.
Yeah, the other one is, I think that's surprising for me is, or not necessarily surprising, but the earth-shaking one is going to be the Kevin Durant non-discussion for 9 days after the Knicks cleared the space, trading Porzingis out. So,
what about the Harrison Barnes to Sacramento?
As you know, Tara, we've talked about leading into the deadline. The Kings were looking for a forward. And
I thought they did a really nice job. I think that's going to be a really nice
Sacramento has, and Chris Haynes tweeted about this, is that Sacramento has done a very, very good job over the last 2 years of kind of rebuilding, rebranding, and resetting their culture. I think Dave Yeager's a big part of that, and the players they've brought in. They're very confident in the guys they have going forward. The miss, so to speak, of Justin Jackson was shipped out as part of that Harrison Barnes trade. So, yeah, the Kings look, I mean, Kings have got Bogey, they've got De'Aaron Fox, they've got a bevy of bigs, Marvin Bagley, Willie Cauley-Stein, whether or not they re-sign him. It should be interesting. Buddy Hield has turned into a heck of a player. I don't think they're there yet, but they're very much a team that's threatening, I would say. With the Clippers waving that white flag, I would very much assume that the Kings will be a possible player for that 8th seed. It's going to be fun to see how the Lakers, Kings, and some other teams there just kind of battle it out for that 8th spot.
I just scrolled right past anything that had to do with the Lakers for the last week.
Yeah, no, that was just smart.
It was just all Woj, just writing an epic about every single nothing happened.
I'm taking the chance to throw the Lakers.
But he used all 280 characters to tell us that nothing happened.
But he wanted to take his opportunities to take the Lakers to task. Woj is pretty closed off from those negotiations directly from the Lakers. And the relationship between LeBron and Woj is definitely one that's definitely a little chilly. So it's fun to get the slightly petty version of Woj just coming out to dunk on them every now and then. I like that in my newsbreakers. Have a little bit of pettiness. It's good times.
So how much do you think that any of the trade deadlines has changed the playoff landscape, especially for the Blazers?
Blazers, I think I think they're improved. Anytime you trade your 13th, 14th, and 15th guys for fringe starters, 5th, 6th, stable, very good bench player in Hood, an improvement at your deep bench rotation, and not really give up anything, cool. I wanted to see more, but I mean, it is what it is.
So you think they've bolstered their playoff hopes? And what about anybody else in the league?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Philly's terrifying. They are absolutely terrifying. I mean, that's a hell of a lineup.
West?
I mean, for the most part, the Western Conference teams in the top half of the conference stayed put. I mean, it was the teams really behind that were making moves, right? Memphis deals out Gasol, the Kings swapping for Barnes, the Mavs are kind of white flagging it here. The Lakers didn't really get much done other than Reggie Bullock.
What I'm getting at is, did anybody improve enough to be a threat to the Blazers?
There's plenty of teams that are already a threat, but I don't think that necessarily changed, right?
You don't think it made it worse yet? No, I'm just, like I said, so glad that the talent moved east.
Yeah, I mean,
for the most part,
moves on the periphery across the board. So I'm just glad to see Utah didn't end up pulling something like Mike Conley out of the bag, because I think that would have been terrifying. that team getting more defensive and better, that hurt. Yeah.
Well, the next big milestone, I guess, is we've got buyout season, we've got All-Star break, All-Star game, and then we're just in the final throes running up until the playoffs. I can't believe that we're 2/3 of the way through the season. It seems like it just started.
Yeah, they got 16 road games, 10 home games left. By the time it's all said and done, it'll be... Or no, I think it's 17 and 10. Anyways, they have more home games than they do, or more road games than they do home games, with a big chunk of that coming in that 7-game road trip after the All-Star break. So I think the scary thing is, after dropping that Dallas game with OKC on a back-to-back on the road and then coming home to close out against the Warriors, you could head into the All-Star break 0-3.
Losing 4 out of the last 5.
That would be problematic, right? You don't want to go into the break and sit on that for 10 days.
No.
So
you certainly don't. And now things are really clicking in Golden State. That's just great.
Yeah,
how are the Blazers going to pull off a win tomorrow in Oklahoma City?
They play like they played against Dallas. They're going to get throttled. I mean, realistically, Paul George has been the second best player in the league this season. I mean, he has been truly dynamic on both ends. And the only reason I don't think he's been the best is because Giannis has finally ascended full-on Dragon Ball Z, Super Saiyan, all of the craziness. Paul George has been very, very good.
Okay, so what I said was, how can the Blazers win the game?
I'm not sure they can right now. I had to see a very, very different team than what we saw against Miami and against Dallas. I still think this is a very capable top 4 playoff caliber team. But if they're going to do what they've done in the last 3 games, I don't think it matters what they try to do. That's the problem.
So you're saying like how they shouldn't play, but what does it actually look like the way that they do play? When you want them to play,
I mean, I want them to get back to moving the ball. I want them to get back to getting to Jusuf Nurkic. I think there were long stretches of times in the Dallas game they went away from Nurkic, and he was an absolutely dominant matchup. I get that he was in foul trouble, but Nurk was being given the ball basically as a scoring option as opposed to being a facilitator. And that's
right. They were giving it to him to finish instead of giving it to him to run it through.
And don't get me wrong, I like Nurk touches, but it felt like they were miscasting him in a role back to what was more reminiscent of the past, as opposed to.
That's what I'm saying. That's what it was like at the beginning of the year.
So it's a little weird. I would like to see them kind of get back to that. Nurk won his matchup against Steven Adams last time, so I'm very confident. And actually, in their matchups, Nurk has done very well. I'm very confident of him to be able to finish and outwork and win that matchup, but I think that needs to spread it throughout the team.
Who's going to guard Paul George?
Good luck.
I mean, are they going to throw Aminu at him again? I mean, Aminu
they're going to throw Aminu,
ran
Harkless, Layman
as hard as he could.
Yeah, they're going to throw them all. They're going to make them work. I don't see the Blazers throwing one of the other longer wings at Westbrook.
Are they going to double team him?
I would assume so. I believe that they need to do whatever they can to kind of stop him, and because he has been unreal. He has been one of the best 2 players in the league.
And even though Russell Westbrook has had like 1 million triple doubles in a row, he's still not a good bet if you're gonna he's still somebody that you don't mind shooting.
His shooting percentages, field goal percentages across the board have been atrocious this year. I'm really looking forward to him and Dame going back and forth. Because remember last time in the matchup we had Westbrook saying he's been beating that ass since day one. Which, no.
Actually, technically, if you look at their patterns together, I mean, Westbrook did win the beginning games, like the first games that they played up against, Westbrook, owned those first games. But then after that, Damian took over.
Like I said, so he hasn't been doing it since day one. He did it on day one.
That would be a more accurate way. So but it's not entirely inaccurate today since day one. It's not like, oh, that's he's lying. That's like there is some truth to it. Is all I'm saying.
Whatever.
But I agree. I do want to see Damian. I was worried about he was holding his hand a bunch during the game today. But I didn't hear anybody mention anything about it, so I guess he was just holding his hand.
Dame's not going on an injury report unless he breaks something. I mean,
I know, unless his hand actually falls off.
So he'll go into the All-Star break with any nicks or whatever he has going on, and he'll nurse himself back to health.
Yeah,
be good times.
Well, that covers all the questions that I had to cover tonight. Right. So we should probably go ahead and wrap it up. Yeah. So let's talk about anything you've got exciting coming up?
Yeah, we do have a Blazer guest coming on the show. So that'll be something cool that we have kind of coming up. Schedules have been a little weird. We're working some other cool stuff for Blazers Outsiders to go remote and go broadcast the show from somebody else's place. It should be kind of cool.
You mean you have a Blazers guest coming onto the Outsiders?
Yes. That's what I said on the TV show.
Well, you said our show, and I wasn't sure which show you were talking about.
My mistake. I apologize.
I know. I was like, ooh, exciting. We're going to have a Blazer? That would be amazing.
We could talk about that one a little later. Other than that, just kind of gearing up for the All-Star break, right? This is the break before the break is over. Now it's time for the break. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, February has a weird rhythm this year. That's for sure.
What about you? You guys just wrapped up another what meetup?
Yep, we had another Women's Hoops and Talks meetup today, and we have another one. Our next one is going to be on March 12th against the Clippers. That is the evening one. We had a daytime one this time, so we had mimosas. That was fun. But the next one will be against the Clippers, and that'll be coming up. So you can follow me to find out more about that at TCB Biggs. We also, time is running out for buying tickets for Blazers Edge Night. There are a few more weeks left, but I believe the ticket sales only go through the end of this month. So I think the 23rd might be the date. So I would encourage people who are planning on buying tickets to donate to Blazers Edge Night to go ahead and get that taken care of so the deadline doesn't slide by and you find out that you've forgotten. You can find out how to purchase those tickets by pretty much any article on Blazers Edge right now has a link to how to do that. So everybody should get on that. I'm at TCB Biggs on Twitter. Dan, go ahead and take us out
All
here.
right, folks, you can find me on all your social media devices, needs, places, whatever you want to call them, gathering spots. At DMarang, at DMARANG, and on Blazers Outsiders before and after every Blazers game on NBC Sports Northwest with Shane Brennan, Joe Simons, and myself. As Tara said, if you can do something for Blazers Edge Night, do it. It's awesome. It's fantastic. I will echo those sentiments every single time. But for now, let's go ahead and wrap it up and get on out of here. Thank you for listening. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Unlike it all, redo it all over again, manipulate the system, do good things. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.